When Karen confronted me at my door with a $5,000 penalty for supposed illegal hunting, I could only smile. She was unaware that this small piece of paper would trigger a sequence of events destined to bring the entire homeowners association to its knees. They believed they governed every square inch of this community. However, there was one area beyond their reach: property law. Once I began investigating the so-called community trails they used for their morning hikes, I unearthed a secret that would completely change the dynamic. If you have ever fantasized about schooling an HOA on the principles of private property, this tale is for you. I had no intention of being cast as the neighborhood antagonist. 2 years prior, upon moving to Green Valley Estates, my sole desire was for tranquility and solitude. Following 8 years of military service and another 5 in the confined tech offices of Seattle, I longed for open space, a great deal of it. My name is Mason Holloway. I am 38, and I am a remote software engineer for a cybersecurity company. The position offers good pay, flexibility, and, crucially, the chance to leave the city for this serene suburb adjacent to beautiful woodlands in western Washington. On the surface, Green Valley Estates appeared ideal. It featured contemporary homes on large lots that bordered miles of forest, and it was just far enough away to feel peaceful yet not entirely cut off. The HOA dues were considerable at $450 per quarter, but the real estate agent had promised it was justified by the perfectly kept common areas and prize-winning landscaping. What she neglected to disclose was that the Green Valley Estates Association was presided over by Evelyn Richardson, who was arguably the most domineering 38-year-old to ever enforce a set of regulations. My first encounter with Evelyn occurred during my second week in the neighborhood. She showed up at my home with a welcome basket that seemed to contain more HOA regulations than actual welcoming items. "We are so pleased to have a new face in Green Valley," she remarked with a smile that failed to mask her true feelings. "I am confident you will grow to love our community once you grasp our way of doing things." That remark should have been my initial red flag. Evelyn, with her flawless bob and upscale casual attire, was a senior manager at a notable law firm and had served as the unopposed HOA president for 5 consecutive years. I would later discover the elections were uncontested because nobody had the courage to run against her. For the initial few months, I largely kept to myself. I submitted my dues punctually, cared for my lawn as stipulated, and steered clear of the monthly HOA gatherings which, based on what my neighbor Sarah Johnson told me, were less about community dialogue and more like Evelyn's personal tribunals. Sarah was one of the few genuinely warm individuals in the area, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher living 2 houses down who would sometimes bring over fresh-baked cookies simply out of kindness. "Try not to let Evelyn bother you," she had told me shortly after I moved in. "She sometimes has good intentions. She just thinks her approach is the only valid one." I might have stayed off Evelyn's radar for good were it not for my weekend pursuit. Having been raised in rural Montana, my grandfather taught me to hunt from the time I was old enough to handle a rifle. For me, it was more than a pastime. It was a legacy, a link to a more straightforward existence. And frankly, I appreciated the intense concentration it demanded. One weekend in October, I came across a substantial, 80-acre parcel of wooded land that bordered our development. It was a pristine forest with a creek flowing through it. After spending a Saturday exploring, it seemed ideal for the upcoming deer hunting season. Feeling curious about the ownership, I conducted some research at the county records office. The property was owned by an 83-year-old gentleman named Frank Williams, who had relocated to Florida years prior but retained the title. I succeeded in finding his contact details and sent him an email, stating my interest in hunting on his land and assuring him of my respect for the property. He surprisingly answered the following day. "Son, I've had that land for 50 years, he stated in his message. "My relatives used to cultivate the open areas. I haven't been back in nearly a decade because of my arthritis. You have my consent to hunt there. Just treat the land with respect and email me a photo if you manage to get a good buck." What I was unaware of then was that Evelyn and various other HOA members had been utilizing Frank's property for their morning walks for years. They had established informal paths, positioned small benches in picturesque locations, and even put up bird feeders, all without the owner's knowledge or consent. They had effectively treated the land as their private nature sanctuary, even though they possessed no legal claim to it. This fact would soon prove to be very significant. On a brisk November morning, I set out before sunrise with my rifle and hunting equipment. I found a spot in a clearing Frank had suggested was promising and waited patiently for the sun to come up. Around 9 a.m., fortune smiled upon me. A robust 8-point buck stepped into the clearing's edge. I made a clean shot, and the deer fell immediately. As I neared it to begin field dressing, I heard voices approaching from one of the paths. Emerging from the trees was Evelyn, at the head of a group of 5 women dressed in pricey athletic wear, all holding water bottles and discussing local gossip. The instant Evelyn saw me kneeling next to the deer, her expression twisted in horror. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, reaching for her phone. "This is a protected zone. Who authorized you to slaughter animals here?" Before I had a chance to respond, she was taking pictures and threatening to contact the police. "This is utterly barbaric," she declared to her astonished friends. "And it's completely contrary to Green Valley's dedication to environmental preservation." I attempted to clarify that I had the landowner's consent, but she silenced me with a sharp gesture. "We are the stewards of these nature trails," she asserted, "and hunting is strictly forbidden." But the events that followed showed me that the HOA's ambition wasn't just to dictate my mailbox color. They aimed to govern my entire existence. 3 days after my run-in with Evelyn in the forest, I discovered a formal-looking envelope attached to my front door. It contained a violation notice from the Green Valley Estates Association, accusing me of cruel hunting activities causing community disturbance and fining me $5,000, payable within 30 days. My initial feeling was disbelief, which rapidly turned to fury. I was familiar enough with HOA rules to know they lacked jurisdiction over actions taken outside of HOA grounds, particularly on private property where I had the owner's direct permission. I phoned Sarah right away, and she let out a deep sigh when I explained the fine. "That's Evelyn for you. She's been spreading this around the school where I work, painting you as some kind of monster. Several parents are now concerned about a dangerous person in the neighborhood." Sarah's voice dropped, despite us being on the phone. "Listen, Evelyn has been conducting her Green Valley wellness walks in those woods for years. She promotes it as a perk for new residents, exclusive access to private nature paths. I doubt she ever checked who legally owns the land." The next HOA meeting was set for the following evening, and I resolved to go and contest the fine. Upon my arrival at the community center, the small room was more crowded than usual. Evelyn was seated at the head of the table, with Marcus Bennett, the 42-year-old vice president who largely served as her sycophant, and Richard Cooper, the 55-year-old HOA treasurer who looked ill at ease, beside her. I saw several other neighbors, one of whom was Jessica Parker, a 40-year-old woman notorious for her zealous reporting of even the slightest HOA infractions. Mr. Holloway has chosen to grace us with his presence," Evelyn declared as I found a seat in the back. "Perhaps you can enlighten the community as to why you believe it is acceptable to partake in violent acts in our community nature preserve." The way she phrased the query made it evident that this was intended as a public humiliation, not a genuine discussion. I rose, clutching a folder with the documents I had compiled. "I would be glad to clear up a few points," I stated evenly. "First, I was engaged in legal hunting with a proper permit on private land, for which I have the owner's express written consent. Second, the property in question does not belong to the HOA, nor is it a community nature preserve. It is privately held by a gentleman named Frank Williams who resides in Florida." I set copies of my hunting license and Frank's email on the table. Furthermore, the HOA lacks the authority to levy fines for activities that occur beyond its boundaries. I have reviewed our bylaws in detail, and no provision grants the association such power. The room fell into an awkward silence. Richard Cooper examined the documents with a concerned look. "He appears to be correct about the jurisdiction, Evelyn," he said tentatively. "If this happened off our property lines." Evelyn cut him off abruptly. "That is where you are incorrect, Mason. Those paths have been a community asset for more than 10 years. We have cared for them, enhanced them, and our residents have used them as part of their Green Valley lifestyle. The technicality of some distant owner's name on a deed is inconsequential after so many years of established use." Marcus gave a strong nod of approval, chiming in, "Moreover, having firearms so near our homes poses a significant safety risk to everyone, particularly children." The discussion became intense as several residents expressed worries about safety and property values, echoing talking points clearly fed to them by Evelyn before the meeting. Jessica Parker got up and announced theatrically, "I chose to live here for the peace and safety. Now I am terrified to allow my children to play outside, knowing armed men are lurking in the woods." I attempted to explain that hunting season has a limited duration and that I adhere to stringent safety measures, but the story had already been set. Ultimately, Evelyn summoned Officer Mike Davis, a 45-year-old local policeman who resided in the community. Upon his arrival, he checked my hunting license and verified that I had operated within legal bounds. In terms of hunting laws, he is compliant, Officer Davis stated. And with the landowner's permission, there is no issue of trespassing. This would be a civil dispute between the HOA and the property owner. This should have resolved the matter, but Evelyn was not swayed. This is not about legality, Mike. It's about our community's standards and the well-being of our residents, she maintained. The HOA board is empowered to uphold those standards, and the fine will not be rescinded. As the meeting wrapped up, Evelyn looked at me with a determined expression. You have 30 days to pay the fine, Mr. Holloway. Should you decline, we will have no choice but to put a lien on your property and initiate legal proceedings. I held my position. I will not pay a fine that lacks any legal foundation, I retorted. And I would advise the board to seek advice from a competent real estate lawyer before issuing threats. On my way out, I saw a pamphlet on an information table titled Green Valley Trails. I took one and was stunned to find Frank's entire property clearly designated as Green Valley Nature Trails, with no acknowledgement of its private ownership. That evening, I called Frank Williams again to give him an update. He sounded weary and exasperated. I had no clue they were using my land in that way, he remarked. I never authorized anyone to construct trails or place benches. The property taxes continue to rise, and I've been considering selling it regardless. My medical expenses are mounting, and I could certainly use the money. An idea started to take shape in my head. Frank, I inquired casually, if you are serious about selling, I might be interested in purchasing it. What kind of price would you be thinking of? As we talked over the specifics, I knew I might have discovered the ideal method to reverse the situation with Evelyn and her HOA. That night, as I delved into property ownership statutes, I found something that left me breathless. The HOA wasn't merely using the land without consent. They were actively scheming to convert it into an Evelyn Richardson Nature Park without any authorization from the rightful owner. The revelation of the park scheme altered everything. While searching through public records, I discovered permit applications lodged by the HOA for the initial development of a community nature park on Frank's property. They had commissioned environmental studies, sought grants, and even organized fundraisers, all for a project on land they did not own. Accompanying the applications were architectural illustrations depicting walking trails, picnic spots, and, at the entrance, a stone monument proclaiming Evelyn Richardson Nature Park, a Green Valley legacy. The sheer audacity was stunning. The following morning, I got in touch with Amanda Lewis, a 40-year-old real estate lawyer who had been recommended by a colleague. She looked over the documents I had amassed and arched her eyebrows. This is quite irregular, she commented tactfully. The HOA has basically tried to claim adverse possession of the land, but they fall short of the legal criteria. In Washington state, they would need to have utilized the land openly, notoriously, and without consent for a minimum of 10 years, and they would also have to pay the property taxes, which Mr. Williams has clearly been doing. Moreover, their development plans extend far beyond simple use. This is a blatant overreach. When I informed her of my intention to buy the land myself, she grinned. That would certainly present an intriguing resolution. Allow me to assist you in ensuring all legalities are properly handled. Over the subsequent days, a peculiar campaign started within the neighborhood. My garbage bins would be strangely left at the roadside after pickup. And signed notes appeared on my truck's windshield, cautioning that animal killers were not wanted in Green Valley. A number of neighbors who had once been cordial suddenly grew cold. Sarah informed me that she had heard Evelyn at a school event, advising parents to keep their children away from that dangerous man on Maple Street. The implication was unmistakable: comply or face being ostracized. While this social pressure tactic was in motion, I was discreetly coordinating with Frank Williams and Amanda Lewis to arrange the acquisition of the 80 acres. Frank's initial asking price was $800,000, but considering his desire to sell and the land's secluded position, we came to an agreement at $750,000. It was a significant sum, representing almost my entire savings plus a portion of an inheritance from my grandparents, but I saw it as an investment in both property and my own tranquility. Amanda fast-tracked the legal work, and we set the closing date for the next week. During this period, I received 3 additional notices from the HOA, one for incorrect garbage placement, another for unapproved vehicle parking. My own truck in my own driveway because it had been there for over 24 hours during a business trip, and a third notice regarding the hunting fine, now with late fees included. I kept each one, heeding Amanda's counsel to keep a record of everything but to avoid confrontation until the land purchase was finalized. Sarah remained my source of information within the community. Evelyn is conducting private sessions with certain homeowners, she disclosed one evening. They are organizing a major announcement about a new community initiative. There is a fundraising gala next month. Highly exclusive. A minimum donation of $1,000 is required. She has been especially chummy with Daniel Thompson from the City Council. I believe she is trying to secure permits or some kind of official sanction. Daniel Thompson was a 50-year-old local official with a reputation for backing development projects, and his association with Evelyn heightened my suspicions about their intentions for Frank's land. I also observed Trevor Adams, Evelyn's 39-year-old husband and an architectural consultant, on the property with surveying tools. One afternoon, upon noticing me observing from the forest's edge, he swiftly gathered his equipment and departed without a word. His firm, Green Vision Consulting, was identified in the park development paperwork as the lead design company for the initiative. All signs pointed to a carefully planned scheme to effectively seize Frank's land for the HOA's benefit, and more specifically, for Evelyn's ego-driven personal project. By the week's end, Evelyn and Marcus paid me another visit. This time, they carried a formal notice of their intent to file a lawsuit if I failed to pay the accumulated fines, which had now reached $5,700 with penalties. "This is your last chance, Mason," Evelyn stated, her voice heavy with feigned worry. "We would prefer not to resort to legal measures, but the community's principles must be maintained." Marcus stood behind her, arms folded, attempting an intimidating posture but mostly looking awkward. "The board has given its unanimous consent to pursue legal action if you persist in your refusal to cooperate," he stated. I gave a polite nod. "I see. I will provide my answer within 48 hours." Evelyn appeared taken aback by my sudden compliance but quickly regained her composure. "I am pleased you are finally coming to your senses," she remarked with a smug smile. "Perhaps you are starting to grasp how things are done in Green Valley." If only she had an inkling of what was about to unfold. The very next day, I finalized the acquisition of Frank's 80 acres. Amanda fast-tracked the remaining legal documents, and by that afternoon, I was holding the deed to the land that Evelyn had been managing as her own personal territory for years. That evening, I could barely rest, knowing that when Evelyn arrived at my door the next morning with her legal threat, I possessed something that would leave the entire HOA utterly astounded. Promptly at 9 o'clock the following morning, as expected, my doorbell chimed. Evelyn was on my doorstep, impeccably attired in a blue blazer and white trousers, her hair perfectly coiffed despite the light rain. Marcus Bennett stood just behind her, holding a leather portfolio that likely contained their legal papers. "Good morning, Mason," Evelyn said sharply. "I trust you have had an opportunity to rethink your stance on the HOA infraction." Her inflection implied she anticipated my complete surrender. Her head was tilted in that signature condescending manner. I grinned widely, moving aside to let them in. "Actually, there's a significant matter I need to go over with both of you. Please, have a seat in the living room." Perplexed by my affable attitude, but not wanting to reveal it, Evelyn entered with Marcus close behind. As soon as they were seated, she took charge. "Before you start with whatever story you've concocted, I must let you know that we have submitted documents to the county court concerning your violation," she stated with feigned generosity. "If you are ready to settle the full amount today, we can still cancel the filing before it goes any further." "That is quite fascinating," I responded, keeping my composure. "But I believe you'll want to review this first." I slid a folder across the coffee table. It held a copy of the deed to Frank Williams' 80 acres, now officially in my name, along with a survey map that clearly defined the property lines. As of yesterday afternoon, I am the legal owner of the property where the supposed hunting violation took place. Consequently, I am also the owner of all the land where the Green Valley HOA has been unlawfully constructing trails, placing benches, and intending to erect a park without the prior owner's consent. The color vanished from Evelyn's face. She grabbed the papers, shuffling through them frantically as Marcus looked over her shoulder, his face shifting from bewilderment to panic. This is not possible," she stuttered. "The community has utilized those trails for more than 10 years. We have established use rights." "Adverse possession," I cut in. "My lawyer has confirmed you do not meet the criteria. You never paid the property taxes, you lacked any permission from the owner, and Mr. Williams was never informed of your plans to develop his property." I leaned in. In fact, I possess records showing the HOA intentionally avoided contacting the legal owner while making plans for significant development on his land. This brings up substantial legal concerns about fraud and misrepresentation, particularly given the funds you have raised for this venture. Marcus started to look unwell, loosening his collar. Evelyn, maybe we ought to speak with our legal team before. She cut him off with a harsh look. This alters nothing, she asserted, though her voice lacked its previous certainty. The community holds established usage rights from years of maintaining and enhancing the trails. The courts will acknowledge. By all means, make that case in court, I retorted calmly. In the meantime, as the legal proprietor, I am officially informing you that all HOA activities on my land must stop at once. Any trails, benches, bird feeders, or other installations are present without my authorization and must be taken down within 7 days. I then pushed another document towards them. This is a cease and desist order from my lawyer concerning the fraudulent park development scheme. All fundraising and permit requests must be canceled immediately. Evelyn shot to her feet, her poise shattering. You don't know who you are up against, she hissed. I built this community from the ground up. Everyone believes in my vision. A single outsider with a piece of paper won't change that. The HOA board is fully behind me. I stayed seated, holding her gaze. That might be true, but the law is behind me. And unlike HOA regulations, actual property law can be enforced by authorities that are not under your control. After they departed, Evelyn storming out with Marcus scrambling behind her, I observed through the window as they hurried to Jessica Parker's house, undoubtedly to start their damage control efforts. Within a few hours, my phone was inundated with messages from Sarah. Emergency HOA meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. tonight. Everyone is discussing your purchase of the hiking land. Evelyn is incensed. By the afternoon, I had arranged for private property, no trespassing signs to be installed along the boundary of my new property, with a contractor scheduled to start the next day. As I was getting ready for the emergency meeting, my doorbell rang once more. This time, it was Emily Chin, a 39-year-old journalist from the local paper. Mr. Holloway, I'm Emily Chin from the Valley Chronicle. We've gotten some intriguing tips about a conflict between you and the Green Valley HOA. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Her straightforwardness was a welcome change after months of passive-aggressive neighborhood dynamics. I welcomed her inside and detailed the situation, being careful to avoid any remarks that could be seen as defamatory. Emily took meticulous notes, her eyes widening at some of the details. So, you bought the land lawfully, the HOA was using it without authorization all along, and they intended to construct a park named after their president without consulting the owner? She shook her head in amazement. This is going to be quite a feature. Just as I was about to head to the meeting, an older man cautiously approached my home. He identified himself as Robert Jackson, a 65-year-old retired accountant who had been a resident of Green Valley for over 2 decades. I must talk to you in private, he said, casting a nervous glance over his shoulder regarding Evelyn and the land you acquired. Inside, Robert disclosed that he had been on the HOA board years ago when they first learned the land was privately held. Evelyn told us to stop trying to find the owner, he admitted. She claimed it would create issues and that adverse possession would eventually handle it. I left the board because of it, telling her it was unethical, but she has been managing things her own way ever since. Robert also alluded to financial discrepancies in the HOA's management of funds for the planned park. They've been levying special assessments for 3 years for a trail improvement fund, significant sums, but the financial statements don't provide a complete accounting of the money. When I raised questions at a meeting last year, I was informed that the detailed records were confidential because of ongoing negotiations. This new information was a bombshell. What Robert described was more than just HOA overreach. It pointed to possible financial wrongdoing. As I thanked him for his courage, he gripped my arm with concern. Be cautious. Evelyn does not take defeat well. She and her husband have many influential contacts in this area. The information from Robert not only fortified my legal standing, but also armed me with a tool that could potentially dismantle Evelyn's control over Green Valley Estates for good. The emergency HOA meeting that night was the chaotic spectacle I had foreseen. The community center was filled with residents, many of whom I had only shared brief pleasantries with during my 2 years there. Evelyn stood at the front, her composure regained, though the strain around her eyes revealed her fury. We have convened this special session to tackle a matter that impacts our whole community, she started. Mr. Holloway has acquired the land bordering our neighborhood, a property that has functioned as our nature trails for over a decade. He is now threatening to block access and undo years of our community's hard work. A wave of murmurs swept through the room as Evelyn proceeded with her well-rehearsed account, depicting me as an outsider ignorant of community spirit, a selfish person prioritizing his own interests over the welfare of the group. Marcus was at her side, nodding emphatically at each of her points. After her speech, she gave the floor to her husband, Trevor Adams, who presented sleek renderings of the proposed Evelyn Richardson Nature Park, featuring walking trails, a playground, and a small amphitheater for local events. All of this is now in jeopardy, he concluded with gravity. Years of preparation and fundraising could be for naught because a single individual declines to support our shared vision. When my turn to speak finally came, the mood was distinctly unwelcoming. I understand everyone's apprehension, I began, keeping my tone steady. But there are several facts you ought to know. First, this land has always been private. The HOA never contacted the previous owner before building trails or placing benches. Second, the park designs shown tonight were created without any legal entitlement to the property. And third, and most critically, the fundraising for this initiative was based on false information, as the HOA never had a legal claim to the land. The room burst into a mix of anger and bewilderment. Some residents demanded answers about their contributions, while others accused me of ruining a community feature. Amid the uproar, I saw Nancy Roberts, the 42-year-old HOA secretary, observing the events with a peculiar look, not of anger, but something more like apprehension. She averted her gaze when I looked at her. Richard Cooper, the treasurer, also appeared agitated, nervously shuffling his papers and speaking urgently to Marcus. After the meeting broke down into contentious factions, Sarah came up to me as I was leaving. "That was something else," she said quietly. "But you have people questioning things now. Some of the longtime residents are asking about the fundraising. Nobody seems to know for sure how much was raised or what happened to it," she added, looking around nervously. "Listen, I believe Nancy is hiding something. She's been behaving oddly ever since the park initiative started. You might want to try speaking with her." Over the next 3 days, I observed as my property markers were placed around the edge of my new land. By the second day, half had been taken down or damaged, just as I had foreseen. I had positioned trail cameras at strategic locations, which recorded sharp images of Marcus Bennett and several other HOA members trespassing to take down the signs during the night. These pictures would be valuable later, but for the moment, I was more focused on the financial aspect Robert had mentioned. In collaboration with Amanda Lewis, I submitted public records requests for all HOA financial papers concerning the Nature Park project. While awaiting a response, I contacted Nancy Roberts, ostensibly to talk about the sign damage. She was initially hesitant to meet, clearly scared, but finally consented to a conversation at a coffee shop 2 towns away, where she thought she wouldn't be recognized. "I can't be seen with you," she whispered when we met. "Evelyn has spies everywhere." Nancy's disclosure was precisely what I needed. As the HOA secretary, she had access to all financial records, including the Special Nature Park Development Fund, which had amassed over $75,000 from residents in the past 3 years. The money is deposited into the fund, but then significant amounts are moved to a consulting firm named Green Vision Consulting for initial design work and environmental studies, she revealed. The firm provides invoices with general descriptions and gets paid right away, with only Evelyn's approval, circumventing the standard board review process for large sums. "And who is the owner of Green Vision Consulting?" I inquired, though I had a strong feeling I already knew. Nancy confirmed it. "Trevor Adams, Evelyn's husband, and there is another partner, Patricia Bennett, who is Marcus's sister. It's all handled very discreetly. The contracts were given without any competitive bidding, explained away as specialized services not subject to the usual procurement rules." Nancy passed a flash drive to me across the table. "I've been duplicating everything." I considered speaking out, but Evelyn made it clear that my position at the school district could be in jeopardy if I created any trouble. Her law firm is the district's legal counsel, and she is on friendly terms with the superintendent. With this evidence, I reached out to Detective Alex Morgan, a 40-year-old detective with the county sheriff's office specializing in financial crimes. After examining the documents, he confirmed there was enough evidence to launch a preliminary inquiry into possible embezzlement and fund misappropriation. This is no longer just an HOA disagreement, he stated. If they solicited donations for a project on land they were aware they didn't own and then rerouted those funds to a company owned by the board president's family, that violates several laws. While the inquiry quietly progressed, Evelyn intensified her crusade against me. A small band of protesters materialized outside my home one morning, holding signs that read, "Save our trails," and "Community over selfishness." Local social media platforms were flooded with posts attacking my integrity and motives. More alarmingly, Sarah phoned to tell me she had been approached by her school's principal, who voiced worries about her association with the controversial new resident and suggested that her upcoming contract renewal could be at risk. Emily Chin's article on the conflict was published in the Valley Chronicle, offering a fairly neutral account but posing sharp questions about the park's fundraising and the HOA's jurisdiction. The day after its publication, I got a certified letter from the HOA's legal counsel threatening a defamation lawsuit and demanding $100,000 in damages for tarnishing the reputation of the Green Valley Estates Association and its leadership. The letter explicitly referred to the financial accusations, asserting they were malicious lies designed to divert attention from Holloway's own infractions. That night, I got an unexpected call from Detective Morgan. "We have acquired initial bank statements," he said directly. "In the last 3 years, Green Vision Consulting has been paid a total of $68,000 from the HOA's special fund. The firm has only one customer, the HOA, and has billed for services that would normally cost about a third of what was paid. We are proceeding with the investigation, but I thought you should be aware." At the subsequent HOA meeting, Evelyn was clearly on edge but stuck to her story. "We will not be swayed by unfounded claims," she proclaimed to the gathered residents. "Mr. Holloway is trying to divert focus from his own misdeeds by tarnishing the names of those who have tirelessly served this community. Be assured, the board will vigorously protect itself from these assaults." As she talked, I saw several residents looking at each other with doubt. Her credibility was starting to crumble. Evelyn must have noticed it as well because she suddenly changed her approach, directing a cold look at me from across the room. "You have made a grave error, Mason. When this is all said and done, I assure you, you will not only lose this fight. You will wish you had never come to Green Valley. I will see to it personally." Her public threat, made before numerous witnesses, was the last piece of evidence I required. As I departed the meeting, I realized it was time to shift from defense to offense. What Evelyn was unaware of was that in 24 hours, she, not I, would be the one facing dire consequences. The following morning, I contacted Emily Chin and asked her to my house for an exclusive story. When she got there, I showed her copies of all the proof I had collected, the financial statements indicating payments to Green Vision Consulting, the company's incorporation papers revealing its ownership by Trevor Adams and Patricia Bennett, the fundraising brochures that misrepresented the HOA's authority to develop the land, and sworn statements from both Frank Williams and Robert Jackson confirming the HOA had intentionally sidestepped contacting the rightful owner. I also provided the audio recording of Evelyn's threat from the meeting the previous night, along with statements from residents who had heard it. "This is thorough," Emily commented, her eyes widening as she examined the documents. "And you're confirming that Detective Morgan is already on the case?" I affirmed. "He has been very professional, handling this as a potential financial crime, not just a neighborhood squabble. I understand he is questioning other board members today." Emily's piece was scheduled for the next day's paper, but she agreed to post an online sneak peek that evening, perfectly timed for the special HOA meeting Evelyn had organized to strategize against defamatory statements. While Emily drafted her story, I initiated the next step of my strategy. With Amanda's assistance, I prepared a formal letter for every Green Valley resident, enclosing documentation of the financial discrepancies and detailing precisely how their contributions had been mismanaged. I attached copies of the trail camera images showing HOA board members damaging my property signs, along with a clear breakdown of the funds collected for the park versus the amount paid to Green Vision Consulting. The letter ended with a proposition. I would create a proper community trail on a section of my property, correctly managed and insured, provided the current HOA leadership stepped down and new, transparent financial practices were put in place. By late afternoon, it was widely known that Detective Morgan had visited the homes of Richard Cooper and Nancy Roberts, likely to take official depositions. Several residents mentioned receiving calls from Evelyn, encouraging them to be at the evening meeting to demonstrate solidarity against unfounded attacks on our community. However, her backing was quickly dissolving. John Peterson, A 70-year-old retired banker who had contributed $5,000 to the park fund was contacting other residents to share his fury over how the funds were managed. Cynthia Miller, one of Evelyn's previous supporters on the HOA board, publicly declared she was calling for a comprehensive audit of all association finances. The special meeting that evening was unlike any in Green Valley's history. The community center was overfilled, with residents extending into the parking lot. Evelyn arrived with Trevor and Marcus, all three appearing strained but resolute. She tried to start the meeting but was instantly met with shouts and inquiries from the attendees. "Is it true you've been channeling HOA funds to your husband's firm?" one person shouted. "Why didn't you inform us that the land wasn't ours to build on?" another demanded loudly. Evelyn attempted to restore order, her voice straining to be heard over the noise. "These are all baseless lies. Mason Holloway is trying to sway this community for his personal gain. Yes, Green Vision Consulting has worked for the HOA, all properly recorded and sanctioned by the board. The fact that Trevor is a principal in the firm does not affect the quality of the services rendered." This statement only led to more questions and protests. "But you failed to declare the conflict of interest," shouted Richard Cooper, taking everyone by surprise as he broke from the ranks. "I authorized those payments because you guaranteed me that everything was legitimate." As the meeting spiraled into disarray, District Attorney William Hayes made an unannounced entrance, with Detective Morgan by his side. They stood silently at the rear of the room, watching. Their arrival did not escape Evelyn's notice, and her composure finally gave way. "This is absurd," she yelled, striking the podium with her hand. "Everything I have done has been for the benefit of this community. If I bent some procedural rules, it was only to make our beautiful park a reality. Would you prefer to have some gun-toting outsider dictate our access to nature?" Her outburst momentarily quieted the room, but then Nancy Roberts rose from her seat in the corner. "That's a lie, Evelyn. And you are aware of it," she stated, her voice shaking but firm. "You intentionally withheld details about the land's ownership. You coerced the board into approving payments to Trevor's company without adequate oversight. You threatened my employment when I questioned the invoices. This was never about the community. It was about constructing a tribute to yourself with other people's money." The meeting erupted once more, with numerous residents calling for Evelyn's resignation. Marcus tried to speak in her defense, but his efforts were half-hearted. Trevor stood silently, his face ashen as he observed his wife's meticulously built world fall apart. District Attorney Hayes walked to the podium and, with a gentle but firm tone, requested Evelyn to move aside. "Given the current investigation," he informed the room, "I recommend the association appoint temporary leadership until this issue is settled." Evelyn would not concede defeat. "I will not be resigning," she announced, looking defiantly at the attendees. "These claims are slanderous, and anyone who repeats them will be included in our legal action. This community requires strong leadership now more than ever, and I will not shirk my duties because of the personal vendetta of one unhappy resident." With that, she collected her belongings and marched out, Trevor and Marcus trailing behind her. As the residents left, many came to me with questions, apologies, and words of encouragement. Sarah, who had been recording the meeting on her phone, gave me a thumbs up from the other side of the room. Emily Chun, who had entered amidst the turmoil, was actively questioning residents for her next article. District Attorney Hayes and Detective Morgan requested that I come to the sheriff's office the next morning to give a formal statement. "This has escalated beyond an HOA conflict," Hayes said quietly. "The evidence points to potential wire fraud, misappropriation of funds, and abuse of power. We are taking this matter very seriously." That evening, I got a text from a blocked number. "Storage unit at Valley Self-Storage, Unit 23, being cleared out tonight. Records being relocated. Just letting you know." I immediately contacted Detective Morgan, who expressed his gratitude for the information and assured me he would investigate. The next morning, I found out that officers had stopped Trevor Adams and Patricia Bennett as they were taking boxes of financial documents from the storage unit. A desperate, last-ditch effort to conceal evidence that only solidified the case against them. Evelyn might have vowed to destroy my life, but it was her own that was now unraveling, entirely of her own making. Yet, she had one final, desperate card to play, and I had to be prepared for it. 2 days later, Evelyn played her final card. She used social media and email to publicize a community trail preservation walk, essentially a planned mass trespass on my property for Saturday morning. Come with your neighbors to reclaim our cherished trails, the message urged. Bring children, grandparents, and cameras. Let's show Mason Holloway he cannot take what belongs to us. It was a transparent ploy to cast me as the villain, one man preventing families from accessing their land. I had anticipated this and was prepared. First, I notified Detective Morgan at the sheriff's office. Then, with Amanda Lewis's assistance, I legally designated most of my land as a private wildlife reserve, complete with the necessary permits and tax advantages. I had a more robust fence erected, with prominent signs indicating its conservation status and the legal consequences of trespassing. I also installed a proper entry gate with an information kiosk explaining the property's new designation. On Saturday morning, I was at the gate with a camera, Amanda at my side. Evelyn arrived as expected, leading about 30 people waving signs like Trails for All. She was dressed in brand new hiking attire and held a walking stick she had clearly never used. She paused at the fence but soon began her performance. "This is a travesty," she proclaimed for the cameras. "We have used these paths for decades. These fences are unlawful, and we are here to assert our rights." She started towards the gate, but before she could reach it, 3 patrol cars arrived. Deputies emerged, headed by Detective Morgan. "Good morning," Morgan announced to the crowd. "This is private property. The owner has filed reports of past trespassing and vandalism. Anyone who crosses this boundary is subject to arrest." He then addressed Evelyn directly. "Mrs. Richardson, orchestrating this mass entry could be used as additional evidence in your ongoing case." Evelyn's face flushed with anger. "This is preposterous. Tell them, Marcus." But Marcus stepped back, unwilling to confront law enforcement. Others did the same, returning to their vehicles as the possibility of arrest dampened their enthusiasm. "You're all abandoning me," she yelled. "After all I've done for you." That phrase, "all I've done," had a different ring to it now that the truth was known. Her supporters dwindled to a handful of staunch followers who also departed after some firm but civil words from the deputies. As she returned to her car, Evelyn shot me a look of pure hatred. "This is not finished," she seethed. But her threat was hollow now, devoid of its former power. The following week brought a deluge of progress. With evidence from Nancy Roberts and Richard Cooper, plus the files recovered from the storage unit, the district attorney's office charged Evelyn, Trevor, and Patricia with fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of HOA funds. Over $68,000 had been misappropriated to pay for vacations and home improvements. The HOA board was dissolved in an emergency vote, and Sarah Johnson was chosen as the interim president. Her first action was to initiate a complete audit and establish new regulations for financial accountability. The remaining board members issued a formal apology to me and the community for their failure to challenge Evelyn's actions. Richard Cooper stepped down, acknowledging he had never questioned Evelyn's orders. In the meantime, I followed through on my commitment. I constructed a proper public trail on a section of my land, with all the required permits and careful planning. I called it the Frank Williams Memorial Trail, in honor of the original owner. A plaque shared his story and served as a reminder to visitors to respect both nature and private property rights. Evelyn and her associates accepted plea agreements to evade a trial. They each received probation, suspended sentences, and were ordered to repay over $100,000. They were also barred from holding management positions in nonprofits or HOAs for a decade. A month later, they sold their home and left Green Valley discreetly, their reputations in ruins. The last HOA meeting I went to had a completely different feel. Under Sarah's guidance, the emphasis was on cooperation, not power struggles. When we voted on a new access agreement for my land, which included insurance and conservation rules, it was approved without a single dissenting vote. "This is what a real community is like," Sarah remarked. As I walked home, I reflected on the whole ordeal. I still hunt on my land, now with the full backing of my neighbors. The HOA continues to exist, but it now serves the residents instead of working against them. And the $75,000 that Evelyn repaid? On my recommendation, it was used to create a scholarship fund for students pursuing studies in ethics and leadership. Sometimes, losing something reveals its true value. The HOA lost its assumed access and in its place, found integrity. As for me, I acquired something much more valuable, a genuine community. And Evelyn? The last I heard, she resides in an apartment with no HOA at all. A fitting end.